What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you an update to Darkworld. That's right, I've done another update involving the Fiendsmith. Whoa, before you run away, it is actually not using any engravers whatsoever. So the card that we utilise the most in Darkworld from the Fiendsmith engine is of course the Fiendsmith Tract. So we will be playing this at 3, and the only other involvement that you need is a Fabled Lorry and a Fabled Raven. Now technically you could cut out the Fabled Lorry and just play Raven if you wanted to as well, as this is what's going to give you the most synergy for your Darkworlds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the profile, I'll show you what we've got and explain why I've updated it the way I have, and just kind of give you a bit of an insight into the way the deck works. If you want to see a test time video to see this deck in action, then make sure you get the video above 50 likes in the first 24 hours, and I will bring that for you. So with all of that out of the way, let's dive headfirst into profile and show you what we've got. So, pretty standard for the Darkworld lineup. Like I've said in all of my Darkworld builds, 99.999% of the time, this ratio will not change. So you're going to go with triple Genta, followed up by triple Snow. You should know what they do by now, but just in case you're new to the channel or new to the profiles, Genta gives you the ability to discard it to add you a Gate of the Darkworld, and then if it is banished, only once can you special summon it at any point anyway. You get to summon it back to the field as long as you control a Darkworld card. Snow has the ability that if it is discarded to the graveyard via a card effect, it allows you to add a Darkworld card from the deck to the hand, and if it's discarded via an opponent's card effect, you get to target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and revive it. We're then of course playing triple Rainbow, obviously the new version of it. Sadly the old version is a bit of a pain in the backside to play. So again, this one has the exact same effect as Grepher. You get to special summon it back from the graveyard by returning a level 7 or lower Darkworld you control to the hand. And if it is discarded to the graveyard via card effect, you add a level 5 or higher Darkworld from the deck to the hand, except itself. But if it's discarded via your opponent's card effect, you get to add, and you also get an additional effect to special summon a level 4 or lower Darkworld from the deck or graveyard to either field. And then of course you've got 2 of the original Grepher. So this one has the ability that if it's discarded via card effect, you get to target a popper card on the field. But then if it's discarded via your opponent's card, you also get the ability to look at to randomly take one card from their hand, and if it's a monster, you special summon it. So you get a bit of double bonus, and then it has the ability to return a Darkworld monster from the field to the hand to special summon it back from the graveyard. Whereas this one specifically means you can't bring back Grepher itself. So basically like Rainbow brings back anything, and then Grepher brings out Rainbow, and you just loop your hand resource back by +2. For the one-offs, we're playing the one Cerulli. So this is the one that basically makes your opponent trigger an effect. Because the idea is that if this is discarded to the graveyard by a card effect, you special summon it to the special summon it from the graveyard to your opponent's side of the field. And then when this card is special summoned by the effect of a Darkworld card, remember, it's a Darkworld card. Its discard effect will actually be a Darkworld effect. The amount of time I've actually had players go, oh, you can't, when you summon Cerulli to your opponent's field, you can't use it to discard because it was discarded off a danger. It's not how it works. As long as it is just discarded to the graveyard by any means necessary, it triggers the effect to summon it, and then if it is summoned via a Darkworld card effect, it will make your opponent, which at the point of giving it to your opponent, be us, discard a card, which means you get the secondary effects off of your Darkworlds. The reason it has that clause, if it's special summoned via a Darkworld effect, is there are ways where you could technically use Muckracker from the Underworld and bring it back, trying to make your opponent discard a card, but because it's not revived via a Darkworld card effect, it won't do that. So that's the reason for that bit of text. We've then got one silver. So this one is if it's discarded to the graveyard by a card effect, you get to special summon it to your field. And then if it's discarded via your opponent's card effect, hello Cerulli, your opponent selects 2 cards in their hand and puts them back to the bottom of the deck. We're then playing the one Lucian in this version because we are going to utilise level 6s a little bit more in this deck, so just so you can ultimately end up setting up the DDD High Wave King Caesar as well. So this one, again, if it's discarded via card effect, you summon it to your field. But if it's discarded via your opponent's card effect, you get to special summon a Fiend-type monster from the deck to either field. So it's a way that you can technically play 2 Cerullis, because you do the first Cerulli, give it to your opponent, makes you discard Lucian. Lucian summons itself back, but then puts another Cerulli on your opponent's board, makes you discard another card. So you're getting even more synergy that way. And then the final technical Darkworld card, but it's not a Darkworld card, is the one Visago the Destroyer. And the reason we're playing this is because it can treat itself as either the original Rainbow or of course Grepher, which means you've got access to get into both of your fusions from the graveyard, which is really kind of important. Especially when you're going to be utilising Fiendsmith Sequence to do that for you. And then for the Danger Engine, we've gone with triple Danger Nessie, followed up by 1 Jackalope, 1 Mothman, 1 Chupacabra, and the 1 Bigfoot. Now, the only other ones that I would advise you bumping up if you wanted to would be the Mothman, but at this exact moment in time, I feel that this ratio is absolutely fine for the way that I want to play it. If anything, you could cut Nessie down one to go for a second Mothman, but the idea is all of these have the ability to reveal them in the hand, and then you roll a dice or randomly gets picked one from your opponent, however you choose to do that outcome, as long as it is randomized. If they don't choose the monster that you've revealed, you summon it and then draw one card. If they do choose the monster, they all have different effects. Chupacabra lets you revive a danger from the graveyard. Mothman makes both people draw a card and then discard a card. Nessie lets you add any danger from the deck to the hand. Bigfoot lets you pop one face-up card your opponent controls, and your Jackalope lets you special summon a danger from the deck. So the reason that's important is it can get you access to a level 4, level 7, or a level 8 should you want to. And then carry on, the main normal summon of the deck that I do in all my Dark World decks right now is going to be the Quackimiru Guardian. Now, this is one of them ones where you go, okay, cool, I've seen Quackimiru Guardian, I'm going to use that as my normal summon, so that when I do see Fiendsmith tracked, rather than going for the Raven, because I'm not going to be able to get this to the board unless I go into Saruja, you go for the Lorry. Lorry gets the discard, and that's how you get your Light Fiend into rotation in order to access all of your Fiendsmith stuff from the extra deck. But ultimately, if you don't see the Quackimiru Guardian and you do see Fiendsmith tracked, then of course you can just go for your Fabled Raven and then start using Fabled Raven's effect to discard your Dark Worlds as card effects to trigger all their effects and increase this level to then make some synchro plays. So speaking of, I might as well show you the Fiendsmith tracked now. We are going to be playing 3 of this, and the reason this is so important is you get to add a Light Fiend from the deck to the hand. So your Light Fiend targets will be your Lorry and your Raven, and then you discard a card via card effect. The only time your Dark Worlds will not trigger is if they're discarded by cost, and you can identify what a cost is on a card by the semicolon, and then of course your Dark Worlds will trigger no matter how they're discarded. So the fact that this lets you discard any card, it means you can mandatorily trigger any of your Dark World discard effects, and it also means that you can trigger any of your Dark World effects should you want to. You also have the ability to banish it, to special summon, to fusion summon a Fiendsmith fusion monster, which is only really ever going to be relevant if you're trying to go into the Lacrima, because you're still going to need two Light Fiend monsters on the board. So very specific, but you kind of get the idea. Lorry is just that ability to discard and get a free summon to the board, and then Raven is obviously when you do summon it as your normal summon, or you summon it back from the graveyard with your Muckraker, or summon it down through Saruja. It gives you the ability to discard via card effect, not cost, any of your Dark World monsters, increase its level, and then go from there. And then, of course, we do play Trivial Tactics Thrust. These will be a little bit cheaper once they're reprinted in the tins next month. But if you don't have access to these at all, what you can do is you can cut these down. And then what you'd be looking for is you'd probably play your talents at 3 rather than at 2. You can also play stuff like Card Destruction as well. And you basically just build up the targets for this. But the reason Thrust is so good is because when you give your opponent the Ceruli, it is your opponent technically activating that monster effect. So straight away your Thrust is live. And the best thing about that is Thrust can get you access to your Tract. So you can then get access to your Fiendsmith engine down that route if you have completed the Ceruli play, and it really does kind of give you a couple of different options. It's the exact same reason why Thrust Talents is so good in this deck as well. And then the other cards we're going to be playing is we are going to be playing 2 Dark Corridor, which are your other targets for this. Again, if you wanted to and you like, I really like Card Destruction, you can cut this down to 1. But the idea is if I see this, it's going to be great access to me. If I don't see it, I've still got 3 different power play spells that can all be searched off of the back of off of the back of Thrust. So you've got loads of different options should you need it. And the last 4 cards we are going to be playing is the 1 Accession, which is your other route to your fusion plays. This being able to discard a Dark World as effect is really important, and then being able to recycle it from the graveyard is also really important. But then, of course, you do have that ability that Sequence can kind of act as a second copy of this, and that's kind of where you don't need to rely on this as heavily, which is why I'm a lot more comfortable playing 1 now. Then we've got the 1 Archives. This is completely down to player preference if you want to. Some people don't play it at all. I still quite like it. I like playing this, and then I only play 2 gates. I've made my feelings on playing 3 gates completely clear. It's one of the ones that I see it in my hand without searching it more times than not, and that's the only times where it's like, okay, cool, well, maybe having a 3rd copy is useful for Genta, but more times than not, when I see it in the hand, I then don't have enough to continue comboing. So it's like, it's not ideal in that scenario, which is why I choose to play it 2 rather than 3, and that's where I play the Archives instead. But if you want to, of course, you can cut out an Archives and play 3 gates. It really is up to you. Some people play Puppetry in the main deck. I personally choose to save it for the side deck, but it really does come down to player preference. Moving on to the extra deck, so for our fusion monsters, we have 2 of the Grepher Dragon Overlords and the 1 of the Rainbow. Now, or colourless. Colourless is obviously ideal for going second, as it is your board nuke. Going first is your Grepher Dragon. But the reason I'm playing this at 2 is the idea is that I can make this during my opponent's turn with a session, but I can also make it during my turn with sequence. So there's ways that I can actually utilise 2 of these and anything else, but more times than not, probably what you're going to be doing is you're probably going to want to go for your Grepher during your turn, and you make colourless during your opponent's turn, or if you're going second. The other fusion monsters we play is the one Aerial Eater. This is actually quite important in the deck. I kind of slightly at first undervalued it, but then I was like, this is actually crazily easy to make. And the reason for that is it requires 2 fiend monsters with the same attribute, which all of your Dark World monsters kind of are. So if you want to recycle them back from the graveyard with, of course, your sequence, you can do that. On top of that as well, it has the additional effect. You get to banish 2 level 6 or higher fiend monsters with the same attribute as each other from the graveyard to summon it back. So it just gives you more access to have that level 6 on the board, which gives you a bit more consistency to get into your Triple D high Wave King Caesar should you want to. We've then got the one Lacrima. This is probably more so for if you need to get that burn damage on the board, maybe into game 2 or game 3, depending on how long you've taken doing your combos or how long your opponent has taken to do your combos. You do have to go out your way a little bit because it does require 2 light fiend monsters. So it means you need to get both your Lurry and your Raven into rotation, because you're not going to be playing the Underworld Goddess in here or the Heaven of Closed Moon, and you're not going to be playing Sequence because you're not trying to get access to your Fiendsmith Engraver. Then the other one that we're playing, of course, is the one Sequence. The idea behind this is Sequence can get you access to fusion summon any fiend monster from your extra deck by shuffling materials from it in your graveyard back into the deck. So that's how you can get into your Darkworld fusions, it's how you get into Lacrima, and it's also how you get into the Aerial Eater. Because we're not playing the Fiendsmith Engraver, that's obviously a reason though we're not playing Desiree, so keep that in mind. And then for the synchros that we're playing, and the reason we're playing synchros is you can actually use them quite, abuse them quite a bit with the Fabled Raven. So the one that I'm trying out right now is a Fabled Andrith. And the reason that I've gone with the Andrith, is that it requires a Fabled Tuner and then 1 or more non-tuner. It is quite specific because it means you need to use your Fabled Raven to make it and then not discard any card effects off of the Fabled Raven, because then it will increase its level. Unless you are specifically having a lower level than 4 on the board, which is very rare considering you've got to look at your Genta, you're going to look at your Snow. It's rare you're going to have a Cerulean on your board for that one. But the idea with this one is if it is special summoned, your opponent can discard 1 card to negate the effect. So it basically just helps you with the hand rip a little bit more. But if they don't negate it, you get to draw 2 cards and then discard a card via card effect. So it basically acts as a Ken and Gen in a synchro form, which I thought was really kind of cool. Also, it has the ability that if a monster or monsters is sent from your opponent's hand to the graveyard except during a damage step, you get to target one of those monsters and special summon it to your field, but negate its effects. So obviously if they choose to discard, you'll get the ability to revive it, whereas with the rest of your hand loop, you're putting them back to the deck anyway. And then we've got, for the level 8, we've got the Groza, the Tyrant of the Thunder. So this one, again, is just generic. It just requires a non-tuner fiend monster. But the idea behind it is during your opponent's main phase, you get a quick effect to target an effect monster on the field, and then you discard 1 monster via card effect, not as cost, to negate the monster's effect. So again, that gives you the ability to trigger off a Dark World during your opponent's turn, which is really quite helpful. And then we've got the one Chaos Angel because you're playing lights and darks, so being able to actually make this with both its effects is massively helpful. Obviously the light effect, not so relevant, it will pretty much only protect itself and then the Groza and the Fabled Andrith if you're going to keep these on the board. More times than not, the only one you'll keep on the board will be your Groza. But the idea is the second one, where your monsters just can't be destroyed by battle, is massively important. It means that they can't just beat over one of your monsters and move on from there. And then for the XYZs, before we move on to the links, so for the XYZs, we've got the number 60 Daguerreus, which is basically acting as another form of the Fabled Andrith, because you can actually get into this quite easy. It really does come down to like what axes you have and whether you want to go down a Synchro route or you go down to the XYZ route. And then, of course, you've got the one Triple D High Wave King Caesar. Like you said, or like you've seen, you've got the Lacrima that can help you get there as your level 6. You've also, keep in mind, your Fabled Andrith is a level 6 as well. And then, of course, you've got your Aerial Eater plus your Lucian in the main deck. So you've got loads of ways to make this very easily. And then, of course, for the other Link monsters, you've got the Muckraker from the Underworld, so this lets you bring back a Fiend monster from the graveyard. I really kind of want to go back to the Zelantis kind of play, and it's quite funny, really, that I did a ban list video the other day, and I didn't even think about Zelantis. Like, initially, when Zelantis was running rampant, a lot of people were like, ban Zelantis, it's broken. And now that people don't play it, just people don't care about it anymore. But it was kind of cool in the past, where you made Saruja, and then you turned Saruja into Zelantis, and then when you get your additional monsters on the board, you make the Muckraker, use Muckraker's effect to lock you into Fiends, and then use Zelantis to nuke the board, and then you can't bring back anything apart from Fiends, including the monsters back to your opponent's board. So if they're not playing Fiends, you can't bring them back, which was really funny. And then of course we've got the one Akashic Magician, being able to put this in the extra monster zone, point into a danger and point into Cerulli, lets you add the Cerulli back to your hand so you can use it again, and then lets you add the danger back to the hand so you can reveal it and then basically get the outcome you need. And the last two for the rank 4s, Link 4s, is the Appaloosa. I mean, if this gets banned on the ban list, it doesn't matter. You've got loads of flexibility in the extra deck. Like, there are ways that you can still play Zelantis. Obviously, there's an option there for you. If you've got 2 slots, you can play Closed Heaven, and then you also can actually play Underworld Goddess, which is really quite funny in this deck as well. I just like the idea of using the Underworld Goddess as it was intended to be used, not just as a make step for the Fiendsmith, but as a way of being able to go, okay, cool, target one of your monsters to make a Link 5, and they go, oh, okay, and then use that and then one other monster on their field, and you go into the Underworld Goddess. And then the last card we play is the one Saruja. Again, this is a bit of a flex spot if you want to, but the idea is you can actually make this very easily. And then when you do make it, you're going to be able to draw fresh cards, and then you're going to be able to summon one more card from the hand, which can help you lead into an OTK, because that one card could be any Dark World, and then you get to bounce it back to the hand with Rainbow, and then bounce the Rainbow back to the hand with Engraver. So you've kind of looped back some of your resource, and then all you need off of the draw from Saruja is that one discard effect, and then that can pretty much get everything ticking again. So it just gives you more access to get into your Thrust, to get into your Talents, to get into your Tract. You've got loads of power play spells, which is really kind of cool for the deck. And then if you really, really wanted to, you could look at putting Beatrice in here, because the idea is you could use Beatrice, and then because you can also Fiend Lock yourself, you can go down the Nightmare Griffin route, and that Nightmare Griffin will allow you to add back what Beatrice sends, which is really kind of cool, because then of course you can start setting up stuff like D-Barrier from the extra deck, you can start setting up stuff like Anti-Spell if you wanted to, just basically those one-on power play spells, spells and traps. I suppose the biggest one that you could actually get hold of if you really wanted to would be Eradicator Virus, because you would send that with Beatrice, make Griffin to get it back or reset it, and then as long as you've got your Greffer on the board, you just activate the virus, and then you completely nuke your opponent's spells or traps, whichever one you want to go for. So it gives you a couple of options for the side deck. You can also utilize stuff like Skill Drain as well, because you're just going to be spawning massively big boss monsters that your opponent needs to deal with. Not to mention that when you add the field spell into play, all of your Fiend monsters are going to be gaining 300 attack and defense. So that makes your Greffer Fusion like a base of 35, and then it makes your Rainbow a base of 33, which is absolutely a bigger pain in the backside to deal with. And then it makes stuff like your Snow a 2k level 4 mini boss monster. It can even make your Chupacabra as a Fiend up to an 1800. So you've got loads of different options should you want to. I really do like Dark Worlds. I feel that it's always going to be a struggle when you're in a Draw and Lockbird format, or people are main decking or siding Draw and Lockbird, but that's where I kind of still like to go with the Kokumiru. But the best thing about Dark Worlds is it doesn't really rely heavily on any particular normal summon card. So that's when you can kind of open up your options if you wanted to. Like, if you desperately wanted to, you could actually play the Adventure package in this deck. It just takes up so much space. Whereas the Kokumiru Guardian is just a really kind of cool, okay, draw phase, standby phase, main phase, Kokumiru Guardian, and they're like, cool, guess I'm not drawing you. Yes, of course, I do know that D-Shifter is a pain in the backside and an issue card to deal with, but unfortunately, that's going to be the same no matter what deck Shifter gets dropped on. If they drop it on Snake Eyes, which is like the #1 deck at the exact time of recording this video, might change by the time the ban list drops, that still struggles under Shifter. Your opponent cannot always guarantee to open up Shifter. If they do open up Shifter, it's gonna be a bad day, but then that's when you can probably go, okay, cool, if they shifted me during the draw phase, you go into game 2, they probably go, okay, cool, the deck can't play on the Shifter, but they don't know exactly what you're playing, and then that's when you can probably start to side in more of your control cards, like your Skill Drain to kind of play through a Shifter, your Eradicator Virus to play through a Shifter, and everything else in between. And then, especially if they won the dice roll and then made you go first, you know they're on Tempai, so that's when you can start playing stuff like D-Barrier and everything else to really slow them down and really protect your board, and go from there. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you do have any questions at all, by all means, please put in the comments down below. Like I said at the start of the video, if you want to see a test and combo video of this deck, then make sure you get the video above 50 likes in the first 24 hours, and I will be more than happy to bring it for you. But for now, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.